Hello and welcome to my channel. So today is the day 4 outlook for this winter storm, and it does not look very optimistic for DC snow lovers. So if we look at the NWS forecast, we can see that inside the beltway it is less than or equal, possibly equal to 1 inch, and the further out west you go in this Reston Ashburn area, this light blue line, this is 1 to 2 inches. Leesburg is 2 to 3 inches. Into the Shenandoah Valley and further out into the mountains, we are expecting heavier snow, 3 to 4 inches, and even 5 to 8 inches along the I-68 corridor and up and along the Allegheny front. So we can see high-end snowfall, which is a 10% chance of snowfall that is equal to this. If that occurs, we expect around 1 inch in the immediate beltway, inside the beltway area, inside the district proper. Some of this 1 to 2 inch line would be touching inside the beltway possibly. It's around Great Falls, and it's basically along this line right here, which is Tyson's, Wolf Trap, and Vienna. But this is only the 10% chance probability of this happening, while in the mountains it's around 8 inches and maybe possibly even up to 1 foot in isolated higher points within the valley and ridge system and the Allegheny front. So we can go down and see the bus situation. So if we have less snow, then the beltway area will have bare ground, but there will be 90% chance of more snowfall. So the beltway most likely will not have bare ground initially. We'll most likely see some amount of snow initially. So for the beltway, we have around a 48% chance of 0.1 inch or more snow or more inside the immediate district area. But by looking at this contour line, in some places in the beltway, such as areas west of McLean, Annandale, Tysons, Rockville, and further into Baltimore, this is around 50 to 60% chance, and this darker blue is 60 to 70, 70 to 80, 80 to 90, and lastly 100 in Ashburn, Reston, and Leesburg. So if you live in Reston, Leesburg, Warrenton, Fauquier, Prince William County, and further north into Maryland, Rockville, and Gaithersburg, you will most likely see at least some amount of snow in the onset. If we look at percent chance of 1 inch of snow or more, Washington, D.C., in the proper district area, it's 27% chance, but by looking at this contour line, this is most likely 30 to 40% chance. So areas along the beltway, maybe further to the west in this area, so around this area here, most likely 30 to 40% chance. And this is 50 to 60, 60 to 70. These are the Bull Ridge Mountains, and that's a high chance of 100%. Now, if we look at 2 inches of snow or more, there's absolutely most likely no chance in the metropolitan area, but there's a really, really slim chance, most likely 1 to 10% chance scraping the beltway around Great Falls, maybe Wolf Trap, Tysons, Reston, and then further north into North Bethesda and Potomac. And as expected, the further west you go, such as Hagerstown and along the Blue Ridge here in the Shenandoah, it's nearly 100%, such as in Hagerstown. And the percent chance of 4 inches of snow, meanwhile, there's most likely no chance in the Beltway area. Some chances in Leesburg, like 30%, and still really high chance the further higher in elevation you go. Now, 6 inches, that's mainly just for the mountains. Even further out west in Leesburg has mostly no chance. Maybe the far northern and western suburbs or the exurbs of DC, such as the Blue Ridge Mountains and the Shenandoah Valley. And 8 inches is just restricted to the Allegheny front and some of the valley and ridge systems, such as Romney. Some of the higher points may be getting possibly a foot. So this is a table. So in the district, it's expected to have less than 1 inches, 0.1 to 1 inches. And the further west you go, such as Harrisonburg, Martinsburg, and Frederick, there are higher chances, 3 inches, 3 inches. So, and 4 inches for Winchester. And there are some watches and warnings in effect by this point. There is a winter storm watch in effect, but mainly for the heavy mixed precipitation and actually some icing events too. But it's mainly for the further west into the mountains and also near Fredericksburg, some of it touching the I 95 corridor, but we are not expecting a lot of ice on I 95. So it may not be that slick as you might think because of the icing event, and the rain event will quickly melt it. It's mainly for the ridge tops 0.25 to 0.5 inches in the Shenandoah and like possibly Hawksbill Mountain or Stony Man or some of those higher points. And same thing in Carroll County, Maryland, that's located in this area, and Garrett County. And heavy mixed precipitation possible, total snow accumulations, and heavy ice. It's mainly extreme western Allegheny, mainly further west into the western Virginia panhandle. And these are for Maryland and also for Virginia. These are ice. And also for Carroll and Garrett County. So now we look at this model. This is the total snowfall for this event expected. So around the metropolitan area, we can see that it's around 0.1 inches to 1 inches, possibly 2 inches. Further near Reston and the Blue Ridge, where it increases pretty sharply up to 4 or 5 inches. But we're not expecting a lot of snow in the general vicinity of the DC area, possibly further west into the Allegheny Ridges. And now we can see the radar imitation of this storm. So we can scroll this back to January 6th. This is mainly ice overspreading southwest Virginia, but as it continues to move north, it starts to change over to snow. This is kind of iffy. Some parts of the Beltway are getting snow, but some are getting rain. But everyone will probably have snow on the star, as we'll see with our next model. But this storm continues to jog north and push almost onto Delaware and the peninsula, right offshore and into the Chesapeake Bay, so it changes over. And this model is actually kind of pessimistic. It only says there's ice in the higher mountains and actually rain along the Allegheny front, which may not be that realistic. And it clears out by January 7th. Some residual rain there, but probably not going to be snow. Now we look at this. So this is a European model. It's saying around about 1 inches in the immediate Beltway area, and the further west you go, it's 3 inches, and onto the Blue Ridge, it's actually around 7 to 8 inches. Yeah, 6 inches and 7 inches along the I-68 corridor. And these are the high resolution models. They go up to 60 hours. This one actually is predicting around 1.5 inches in the Beltway, but it has a really steep cutoff line, so this may have to be seen. And again, a really high total along Damascus and Sugarloaf Mountain and the Blue Ridge. So if we look at the rain and thunder, on Friday it's calm, and by Saturday it's starting to move in as mainly as snow, but some icing and freezing rain from southwestern Virginia and North Carolina. And this storm will be snow initially near the Beltway area. And as you can see along the I-95 corridor, actually almost down to Richmond, maybe Glen Allen, some of that freezing rain and ice pellets are there. So if you are traveling on I-95, you may have to leave earlier to try and get ahead of the snow and especially that freezing rain. And as time continues to move on, it's still snow in the DC area, 1.7 inches, hence the steep cutoff line, and some isolated pockets of snow here, and heavy snow along the Blue Ridge. Still some ice, but not as further deep down into Virginia, not near Richmond anymore, and Fredericksburg. And now it has basically completely cleared out. It's actually freezing rain and most likely an icing event on the Blue Ridge by this point. And by Saturday, some freezing. It's still freezing rain and some rain in the Blue Ridge. However, Leesburg is at freezing point, so the freezing rain line may look more like this versus an isolated pocket and a line there. And if we can look at the temperature profile for this high resolution model, we can see that on Saturday 3 a.m. the ground level temperature is actually freezing in this beltway area. And as the altitude increases, the temperature increases at 1,000 feet, and 2,000 feet, but by around say 5,000 feet, it should go back to freezing. So this kind of may look like a freezing rain event if it starts earlier, but by when the snow moves in, it's a consistent profile where the temperature is dropping as altitude climbs. And as the snow continues to move through by 2 p.m., it's still freezing, but this warm air has started to intrude further into the mountains. There are some pockets of above freezing, mainly in the valleys, but it's still 33 degrees. And if we just say around the National Mall and move the altitude up, it's actually still freezing, so it's mostly a profile for possibly sleet. 3,000 feet, we may have to see what the cloud base is. And it says rain, so it might be sleet or freezing rain, but we have to see what the cloud base is to see what falls. So these models, the European is predicting 0.7 inches in this immediate vicinity to 1 inch, and that's really close to this NWS forecast. And this North American model, it's a high resolution model, but it may be a bit optimistic. It's predicting 1.5 inches and more in the mountains. It's kind of forecasting the high end amount of snow. And for the American model, actually we can view it here. We are looking at around one inch of snow in this area, so it's kind of matching the National Weather Service forecast, possibly some higher amounts. And that'll do it for today's video. Thank you.